In a moment, you're going to dive into the second psychic coaching session that Stephanie is having with me. The first one is already on my channel, so you can go and watch that. As you're watching this psychic session with her, you can see in some ways we went away from what the original issue that she came in with the first time, but these are still huge issues and questions that she's asking that are driving forces for her, that as we're uncovering them, it's helping her move forward towards her ultimate goal. Let's see how she's doing. I was reflecting how we want to begin today. If I'm seeing somebody repeatedly once a month or twice a month, sometimes they prefer to share before we get into the session to kind of recap. What would feel best to you? Do you want to recap and reflect, or do you just want to dive into the meditation and then ask whatever question you have?
I think it might be interesting to do a quick little recap.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah. What what do you want to share about how the last month has been and things that have changed or reflections or how things have been going?
Well, I think that last month or earlier in the summer, I was still really focused on trying to figure out how to make money. And it it feels really important to me that whatever direction I go in, that it feels good to me, that it feels fun, and that it doesn't feel like I'm just, pressuring myself to do anything to make money. I'm tired of having that kind of desperate energy behind the thing that I'm doing. And so anyhow, I did get excited about the idea of doing retreats, and then a couple things came up. I talked to someone else who does retreats, and that made me feel overwhelmed. Just their system and their method made me feel like, oh, maybe I don't want that. That doesn't sound good to me. That doesn't feel good to me. And then I had to remember that I always do that. I always go looking for more information or the right process, and then other people, other people's systems and the way that they do things doesn't feel right to me. And then suddenly this thing that I was so excited to do feels like I can't, or it won't work, or I'm not capable of pulling it off. So I think that is more about me just trusting that I can figure it out and not trying to get everyone else's input on how I should do it. And so anyhow, I haven't taken any action on that, but I'm still feeling like I think that's the right move when I decide I'm going to do something. And then I did spend some time trying to sell things, and that was not good. It really, my energy just tanked for like 2 days. I had spent hours trying to list these scales from my store on eBay and on Facebook Marketplace. And I was just in such a foul mood. Whereas there was this other piece of equipment, the point of sale hardware that you would use to, process credit cards and stuff like that. That I put on my Buy Nothing group, and someone who heads up the local high school, like the band booster group, the fundraising group, they were so thrilled to have that for their fundraising events. And that felt good. I felt more excited to give away a thing for free than to try to coordinate selling each of these scales for $100 and shipping them to who knows where. Although I did sell one scale, and I was grateful for the $100. I did feel grateful, even though it was a hassle to get to it. And then at the end of the month, I found myself really, I kind of accidentally stumbled into this moms group that meets every week. And this is the first time my kids have really made loving connections with other kids. And I've bonded with the moms really quickly. And I think one of the big things I'm wondering about and giving myself a hard time about right now is it okay that I'm focusing on building community and building relationships and is that okay? Is that okay for me to focus on being a mom and helping my kids build relationships and then also me building relationships with other moms? Is that all right that is my work right now? And there's doesn't feel like there's space to build a business. And even, having an audition this week and I didn't prepare for it because I've been immersed in being present with my family and being present in these moments with these other moms. And, am I letting myself down by not putting the business in the number one spot? And same with not putting the performing in the number one spot. Especially when, if we're moving abroad next year, what's the point
Mm-hmm.
of building an awesome friend group? But it feels so good. It feels so good
Mm-hmm.
to have those connections. So that's what's
Mm-hmm.
been going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that is, I know that struggle of it. You're putting down roots in some ways, even though you know
Mhm.
you're leaving. But I'm glad that it feels good now. And then, quick question. Do you have, and no pressure if you don't, but do you have a date or a month where you're hoping this is when the move happens?
Kind of. I would say next May,
Mm.
if not
Mm-hmm.
sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Sooner feels a little crazy, but the reasoning
Mm-hmm.
behind this is that our seasonal allergies here were so bad in June and July. The whole goal
Mm.
was to leave before June.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's a really smart thing.
yeah.
I like the idea of moving with this big marker. I mean, I've never had allergies, but I know they're really uncomfortable to go through. So that's a great motivator to be able to
Yeah.
avoid all that discomfort.
I had originally said that I didn't want to spend another winter here, but
Mm,
A, we're not ready to go. And B,
mm-hmm,
I this was our first time living in a home where we heated it with firewood. And
mm,
I feel like it was just such a cozy time. We loved building the fire and we've got this huge couch. And so we just like stay in the living room area. And I definitely want to do another Christmas here mid-January or really the second week of January when the Christmas stuff is gone. That's usually when I'm fed up.
mm,
So I have considered because we were talking about maybe spending 3 months in Costa Rica before going to Europe. And
mm,
I've considered maybe towards if I don't do a tropical retreat in January or early February, maybe we go on that adventure first to Costa Rica and then we come back and kind of get ourselves together before going to the UK.
okay, cool. And UK is your destination at this point.
We're pretty sure that Ireland is the the landing spot.
Okay.
I haven't really, worked through that with anyone or done any astrocartography or anything, but from the
Mm-hmm.
homeschooling perspective and a lot of other things, Ireland really ticks all the boxes. But I'm not sure at this point if we can get the visa that we need to go straight there or if we might have to
Mm,
spend a year somewhere else first. So I've also been looking into if I got a student visa, um, either going to school for acting or, vocal performance or theater. Or I've always said, oh, someday later when the kids are older, I want to go to culinary school. I used to really want to
mm,
live in London and go to culinary school. London's a little expensive for us right now, but those are kind of some of the options that have come up.
mm. I love that. Those all sound really good. All right. Anything else you want to just put out there into the air so that it's spoken?
Mm. I think just one of the big things that's been coming up for me is earlier this summer, I acknowledged that I really would like permission to be mom right now and be present with my kids and, enjoy my days with them. Yesterday, I spent the whole day sewing her parrot costume. And it was really lovely. It was really lovely watching her learn this new thing. And she was telling me what a great sewing teacher I was. And I would love to break free from that mom feeling of when you're working, you feel guilty that you're not doing stuff for your family. And when you're with your
Mm,
kids, you feel guilty that you're not working. I would love to
mm-hmm,
figure out how to give myself permission to be where I am doing the thing I've chosen to do and just
mm-hmm,
let the other things go.
mm-hmm. That's a big one. So, quick question. I understand the idea of when you're working, you feel guilty that you're not with your kids. And when you're with your kids, what is the guilt about?
It kind of depends. Since I haven't really been
Okay.
working on my business, I would say it's more about the household stuff. It's all the stuff that I could be, should be doing, right? Like dishes or laundry or preparing for the trip we've got coming up. There's always such a long to-do list. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I tend to categorize that kind of time with my kids, whether it's playing or going to a beach or going to a zoo or something, in my brain, I categorize that as rest or entertainment, which to me is something that I am never able to fully earn or fully be worthy of. I just, I'm always telling myself, like, oh, I should get up and go clean up the kitchen, or I should, prep a couple meals or whatever. But I will say I've definitely taken the pressure off in terms of I should be doing something business related. I do feel like
Right.
I've kind of let that go. And I got a little relief this month because I found some money. I found a IRA that my dad had set up for me when I was a kid. And so I think I am feeling that burden lifted a little, even though the problem isn't solved, it's less dire. So the thoughts are more about what it's taking to get through day to day life, whether that's mom stuff or housewife stuff.
Okay. I'm just making notes here. I feel, even though I know I said, do you have one more thing to say? As I'm getting quiet, I feel that there's still maybe one more. I don't know if this is a happiness thing or an unhappiness emotion. But if there was anything else that you're like, oh yeah, and then just to get it all out, here's this other thing. It feels that there's still something else that would be good to vocalize.
I think I'm still so obsessed with body image stuff. And I'm aware of how it gets in my way of really truly enjoying certain moments.
Mm.
Like I was on a trip with my husband recently and I was just thinking about it a lot. My shorts were too tight and I had told myself that I couldn't afford to buy a better pair of shorts before we went on this trip. But it was just this constant reminder that I'm too big. And I find myself, my husband does not care. He's very affirming and appreciative of my body. And I still find myself wanting to apologize for, having let my body get so big. And I'm
Mm.
just frustrated with how much energy it takes up and how much it steals from the moment.
Yeah. I don't know how hard it was to say that out loud, but I know it was emotional. So I really honor you because I also feel to put into words and say out loud things like that, it's not just emotion, but it also feels like the pain of it is then like, to me, I feel all these sharp, jagged edges inside of like, even to say it feels painful. Well, if I have your permission, I feel that we should start there, if that's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if any of this, at any point in time, whatever I'm speaking about or guiding you through, you have your own body knowledge, your own wisdom, your own way of tuning into yourself and knowing This is a comfort zone. This is perhaps a little bit outside of that. But internally, if you're stretching beyond that, beyond what you can stretch, you're not required to stretch beyond that. Your energetic system will naturally go to what is your growing edge, if there is a growing edge. Or even, it's funny, as I'm saying that, they're telling me instead of a growing edge, it's a retreating edge. That's new for me. Okay. Well, we'll find out where that goes. All right, taking in a deep breath, as deep as you feel comfortable. It could be shallow if that feels better. And one of the feelings coming in with this breath is that feeling of when the tide goes away. And this is one of those moments when the tide goes away, when it's retreating, when it's ebbing. That's not a sense of loss. It's a sense of all of the things that were building pressure or needing attention just flowed away with the tide. Everything that was creating too much presence and too much energy. So this ebbing of the tide is a relaxing. Yeah, that's what this retreating edge has to deal with too, is a relaxing. So taking in another deep breath. You're connecting to the earth to some degree with your toes, but this is not a permeable layer. And what I mean by that is I'm tuning into that you're attuned to the problems going on with the planet and some other things that are these great areas of conflict, of war, if you will. And there's a way in which you're so composed of compassion that the struggles and wars that are happening with others, you take on some of that, and then some of this becomes, in effect, a war with your body. And what this might be a conceptual leap for you or for anybody listening, and I'm going to say it, and it'll just be an idea, like a thought experiment. Sometimes there are ideas that we explore. Whether or not that's the full idea that will be adopted later, we don't know. But just like you explore a new restaurant or explore a new song or explore a new place to see, how do I feel about this? Does this connect for me? One of the things happening on a micro macro level is, as the planet is going through the impacts of people destroying parts of it and degrading parts of it, some of what also happens is sensitive people also go through these energetic conflicts. And so the war with your body also relates to this conflict with the planet or with climate change. And even so, the conceptual leap might be, if you can have more kindness, if you can create a peace treaty with this, and we're not going to logically think of a peace treaty, we're going to get there via another way. Your compassion and kindness with your body also helps the planet. That's the conceptual leap. And again, whether or not that's too much for you, or if you want to believe it, or if anybody else, no matter how we feel about it, it's just an idea for us to play with that's out there now that can be returned to periodically to see how do you feel about that. And I'm going to shift gears slightly. So because I said you're not going to mentally make a decision or a way like, this is a peace treaty I'm having with my body. I am hearing it's more about a relationship to home. So your body is your home for your spirit, your human home, and then you have your physical home. And as you are Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. They just showed me a little bit more about that. It's almost like all of the problems get stacked on top of each other of how does one create home? First, it starts with your body, then it starts with your family and your actual physical home. Then it's where you live, then it's how we deal with the planet. So one of the things that you are really deeply desiring and exploring is how do you have a beautiful experience of home? And knowing what you shared just now, like it's not like you're like, oh, I had a beautiful experience and my shorts being too tight on my body. So I know that it maybe has not been a beautiful experience in all of these ways. That's where this yearning is going for at a very deep level. And the beauty of it is in whatever area of life you choose to look. Yes, that's also what they're telling me now, huh? So whatever area of life you choose to look and put your focus onto is great. Whatever area brings you pleasure. So right now you're focused on a home of a community and friendships and having these beautiful moments with your children. And that is delightful. And you're not intensely focused on, well, where's money coming into this home, or how am I helping the home of the planet or the greater community of other eco-friendly people who you work with or provide services to. Your interest and flavor and pursuit of home could change with the seasons. Yes. Okay. They're showing me now your culinary interests and connection to nature too. If you want to use that as a model to, if it feels like it would be helpful to shape and structure, oh, so during this season, whether it's a literal season like a summer or a fall or a winter, or a metaphorical season, the focus is on home and family and community. And in another season, perhaps winter, that may be your business season focus. And this is a way in which, similar to many other living things, you naturally shift from stage to stage. And when trees leaf out in the wintertime, like a fruit tree or deciduous trees, if people see that happening, then they say, oh my gosh, well, this tree doesn't know what's going on. It's going berserk. Or, with climate change, sometimes trees don't know what season it is. But we wouldn't see a tree blooming in the winter and be like, well, that makes so much sense. You would think something is happening here where this tree is confused. And so similarly, there's a sense and a reason to how you're going to want to structure these things that will feel right. And you can decide this makes as much sense as deciduous trees losing their leaves in the winter, that this part of the year I focus on these activities, and this other part of the year I focus on different activities, and letting your life have this seasonal flow to it. Similarly, even with the meals you cook, like the tomatoes just taste fresher in summer than in winter. And yes, you can cook with a tomato in the winter, but you're not going to be having fresh sliced tomato on a huge green salad. Probably you're going to be having a tomato sauce or root vegetables or something more of the hearty variety. So these rhythms and seasons and callings that you have, they can flow like the water flows in a way that feels really sensical to you, and whether or not other people outside of you perceive it as making sense, as long as it makes sense and feels good to you, then that's what makes sense, and that's a path that you can take. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment because I know there were some other things that are coming through that I want to share. And I'm also just going to let that simmer for a minute. This is so funny. I know that you like to cook and you're a great cook, but now today I just feel like they're giving me all these food analogies and it's just cracking me up. Yes. Okay. And the next direction I'm going to go in. So similar with these natural analogies related to either business or sustenance or money income, similar to the retirement account that you found that had been planted long ago, and now had to reap the harvest. You're going to be exploring things of that nature where there's seeds that'll be planted, then they might be on the back burner for a while, just growing and plugging away and not having a lot happening. And then there will be the natural harvest time for whatever the project or the activity is. And you may also work in a way similar to this seasonal analogy that in some fields, in some markets, there's certain seasons of the year when most of the money comes in, and the other seasons of the year, money isn't flowing in, but people know the whole cycle. And so there's no concern or worry, oh, we're having all these pleasures in the summer and we're doing all of these things. Well, there can be a rest and a relaxation and a calm acceptance because there's a knowing of, well, winter time is when the big money harvest comes in, or fall or spring. I'm not yet, but in a moment maybe I'll tune into more timing or more info on that if we want. But having again this seasonal way of structuring the different things allows you to be in the moment and be connected to what's happening now, because you know that the harvest will come later. And yes, somebody who has an apple orchard, they're going to check on the trees, but they're not worrying all spring and summer, oh, is it going to happen? And they're not worrying in the winter after everything has been harvested, well, what about next year? They have set up and understand the way that the seeds are planted and the way that the harvest runs and all of that. I'm going to come back to this. If you want us to go more in depth, I can, but also what I feel is if I talk about it too much, there's a part of you that still wonders, yeah, but what seeds am I planting? Like, I would actually like to know so that there can be a future harvest. And I also feel like, even though I know that's a concern to you, I'm going to talk about some other things first, because it feels like your sense that you have been doing of living in the moment and enjoying these times with your kids and building community is really returning you to yourself, to your desires, and to like your truest you. And that, again, that you that you're being now isn't worrying about the harvest that's coming later, because that's being taken care of in one way or another. I'm feeling the need, I'll pause and check in a little bit more. If you want to give a direction, you can, but I'm feeling the need to look into either speaking about the community that you have there and your next couple months there. I feel that I do want to talk about your body, relationship with your body. And I also want to move delicately with that, because I know that it feels, as I said before, it feels jagged, and that I don't want to activate anything in you that feels hurtful or cause you undue pain. Even as I say that, I'm getting this sense of what if you let yourself accept that from this point forward, you've already experienced the most pain and heartache and frustration about your body that you will feel in your lifetime. And that from now on, everything is less painful, less stressful, less strained, less difficult. One of the things they're showing me is you holding yourself like you would hold Vivian or a small child, and holding your body with that love and being like, don't worry, I'm here to take care of you. And we're going to find a way to mend this relationship. We're going to find a way to feel good. We're going to find a way to, I don't know, when I look at what they're showing me. I also, this little girl, I don't know exactly what age, maybe like 7 or 8 or 9, but also could be younger too. It could be 6. I get the sense of this powerful, assertive kid who, I don't know if she had chubby cheeks or not, but if she did, she didn't care. She was just the kind of kid who, it felt like, had this thirst for life and this enthusiasm for play and fun and just jumping both feet in. And I'm not saying, I don't know if you were extroverted as a child. I feel like I'm describing what feels like an extroverted person, although that might not be the way it was, but it feels that an introvert could be a both feet in kind of person who's just excited for life. There's something about the confidence that kids have when they have these chubby cheeks and everybody loves them, even though they've got chubby cheeks. And nobody's ever like, oh, you would actually be a cuter kid if you didn't have your chubby cheeks. Like the chubby cheeks are what makes people be like, oh, you're just adorable. And I cannot even help myself to be head over heels, feeling all the love flowing out of my heart. Okay, I'm hearing and feeling there might be some people who are like, every time we say chubby cheeks, I think that's fine for a little kid, but not for me. I get that some people are not liking this. And I'm still going to keep on repeating it because psychologically we know, oh, if chubby cheeks are okay on a child, then they're okay on an adult. But yet we never hear anyone else saying that in the adult world in a big way. Like, have we ever seen a magazine where they're like, chubby cheeks are in this season? How do I get those chubby cheeks? Cosmo or Vogue or whoever. I don't even remember. There's probably other magazines. I know there's Elle and Essence, but I can't think of all the other women's magazines. But why don't they put people on there with chubby cheeks? I know we've got a few figures who are big and bold and beautiful. And I know that some people listening, either people watching this or you, are like, yeah, but I don't want chubby cheeks. That's okay. I'm still just going over this because it needs to be said that there is beauty there too. Let's see what happens next. Where are we going from here? Yeah. So I'm seeing from chubby cheeks, there's this downward decline into slim pickings, and slim pickings being this small contained window of space in which so many people have felt like they were allowed to exist in. And that any one of us, without even knowing, could be trying to cram ourselves into a narrow hallway that you have to turn sideways to walk down the narrow hallway. Yeah. And it feels like every step there's obstacles and things poking out from the walls of this narrow hallway, when all anybody really wants is to be able to breathe, to be able to shout out, to be able to play with the raucous both feet in delight of jumping in a muddy puddle or eating a bright red apple, not caring if you have chubby cheeks or mud splash on your cheek, and crafting with yarn and construction paper and all of that. There's a juiciness of that childhood exuberance that when moving through this narrow, jagged hallway, it doesn't make it out to the other side. It feels like one of the ways back to feeling at home in your body, no matter what it looks like, because I don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to look like. I know there are intentions and desires of, well, it would be nice if it was this size, or how about so many pounds less, or so many different ways that the form looks, or back so I can fit in this dress or this shirt or this top. I don't know where you're going in terms of like the place where your body will be when it's done. But what I know that it wants now, more than a size or a look, is joyful childhood exuberance. It wants this, one of the phrases I wrote down right when we started was melodic play. It wants to be taking a bite out of life. That makes me think of that whole take a bite out of crime. But no, you're taking a bite out of life. Like you're biting into the big red juicy apples. And oh yeah. Okay. They're showing me too, like if you can let yourself detach in a way from some of the body thoughts and start to notice in the world around you where you appreciate big, curvy, chubby cheeks, or like a big round apple, like roundness, and things that would be considered like busting out of their seams or whatever. Like that if there was a human counterpart, it would be considered overweight or too curvy or too much or all of those things. With non-humans looking in the world and just finding where you find delight and appreciation in big mountains, big apples, any of the things that feel over the top, this exuberance spilling over. What I'm seeing is that letting yourself take that in is going to help this internal recalibration so that whatever state you want your body in will be a graceful or smooth process of getting there that doesn't feel like constriction and jagged, painful relationship that's built on like hatred and nastiness. I don't know that you hate your body, but I know some people hate their bodies. Yeah. So looking around in the world and being really on the lookout for where can I see round shapes spilling over big things and enjoy it. Things that are exuberant, things that are overflowing. And whether or not your body will ever look like that, it allows your being to experience it, because there is a need within you, a really deep visceral need to experience this. And yet there's this contrasting of judgment of, but the body is never allowed to look like that. Oh, but we can't appreciate that, because what if we appreciate that and then we accept the body that looks like that? It becomes this very constricting set of rules that your being does not want. I want to highlight again, I get if there's a part of you that's like, but I actually do want to be thinner. I think the only way you can get there is by engaging in this delight of radical exuberance of life and loving these things that are spilling over, these round shapes, these curves. The other thing that I'm getting is, so when, let's say you look in the mirror, you put on some clothes and you're like, as soon as you notice a body thought that feels not positive, not gentle, what they're showing me that would be a great way to gain some neutrality about it is to, just like you would parent a child, to essentially parent this self-talk and say something along the lines of, we're not speaking to my body like that right now. This is the season where there's only neutral comments, there's only neutral thought, and that's not how we're talking right now. And again, as if you would to a little child. When I have self-talk that comes up, if I'm working on something, I definitely will have, it's easier to replace the negative self-talk if you already know what you're going to say. And so that's why they're giving you this. You can tweak it to make it work for you. But this positive, well, we're not even going to go positive yet. That's the thing they're telling me super clearly. We're just going to stay neutral. You're just going to, I don't know what. So let's say it's the shorts that are coming that you're putting on, and you're putting the shorts on and you're noticing they're too tight. And then there's the jagged, pinchy, unhappy thoughts of, wherever it goes about that. Then you would notice and say, we're not going to talk about my body like that, or that's not the relationship that the body's having. And I even picture taking your thought as if it's this thing that you could physically use your hand to grab, pull it out of your brain, and just like set it in a box. If you actually want to make a box, they're showing me like a comments box, like restaurants will have, or, tell us what you think. So you could have a comment box if you want, where you put these thoughts. Afterward, because the body kind of wants to have, I'm not thinking that, what am I thinking? It needs to be totally neutral. It would just be something like, these short in a way that my mind doesn't like right now, or these shorts fit in a way that it makes my legs look XYZ, whatever's neutral. They're showing me, don't try to go positive about your body, stay neutral about external things. fine. And maybe you make it a game with your kids. I don't know if you want to go there with them. You don't have to tell them all the things, or whatever gives you a frequent reminder of looking for all the moments of radical exuberance and letting yourself have all of those radical exuberant things. Even though I was visually describing things that were like, if we visually looked at someone who had a body that, doesn't fit the slim stereotype, that fits more the heavy stereotype or the curvy, what I'm also getting is like the crafting, for example, there's radical exuberance that's in texture, that's in flavors, full body, that creamer that you love, that I'm sure there are like fabrics or yarns or things that feel really good, or shapes and colors. Letting yourself notice the ways in which you already appreciate radical exuberance and richness, and expanding that feels that it's this way of becoming whole in your being so that you feel really at home. And again, if you do this for anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months, I don't really know how long this takes. After you have been integrating this and feeling it, it feels like at that point, if you're like, yeah, I actually still do want to lose 15 pounds or whatever. Yeah, I'm getting chills about this. It feels like whatever your desire is, that process will flow more easily because there won't be all this emotional contrast and conflict and jibber jabber. It'll just be like, this is what's happening. I don't know if it'll still be super easy, but it'll be one of those things that it won't be difficult beyond reason. It'll actually be easy in many ways. Like, yeah, you might have to do whatever people do when they want to get more toned or whatever. Like, I'm not saying lifting weights is easy, but there won't be any mind or emotional drama about it. That was a long monologue. I know I told you a lot, and some of it was a lot of heady things. How do you feel about any of it? Or do you have anything you want to say?
Oh gosh, my brain is so busy. I mean, I was thinking about you're talking about, a child, and I was thinking about a couple things. One is my son is almost 9 and clearly has my metabolism and zest for food. That is when I started gaining weight. That is when my dad started taking me running and my mom took me to Weight Watchers with her. It was like, oh, well, now you get to go with me to this thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I already knew, if I already had thoughts about bigger bodies, or if it was then recognizing that, we could not trust my body to request the right foods and the right amounts of foods, right? And so I think I'm really struggling with parenting it because I've not like fixed it in me. I don't know what it's supposed to be like, and I just don't want to do whatever happened to me. I don't want to do to him.
Yeah.
And so that was coming up, and then I've decided so many times I'm not dieting. That energy would be so much better spent learning how to accept and eventually love myself.
Mm.
But it always comes up. It's a thing I can control. I really crave control, and I feel like that's something. I think that's why I keep getting bigger, because it's like I should be able to control this. I should be able to decide, and I should have the willpower and the discipline, And so it comes up all the time, or if I'm dissatisfied with something or stressed about things, that's something I think to control and restrict. And then I can come back to like, no, that's not how I want to be in the world. But then, my mom's on a new diet and she's already lost a lot of weight, and I'm mad about it because she's spending so much money and it's so restrictive and it's not sustainable. and
Mm.
I don't want it around my kids. She says things like, "Oh, I can't have that. Oh, corn from the market. That sounds so good. I can't have that." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we shouldn't be talking like this." So I'm trying to accept me, and I can't ignore what's happening around me. And so that was coming up. And then you were talking about the seasons, and I instantly was like, I want to play right now. Like that. And it just felt, I was like, yeah, I'm in total vacation mode. I just want to play right now. And it feels like I've wintered so long waiting for this opportunity to play. So that felt good. And then you were talking about like kind of coming back to myself and the child. And my husband recently asked, "Have you gotten louder?" Because my response was, "Well, didn't I used to be like this?" Because I used to, I startled very easily, and it comes with all these like yelps. It's always like, like I do big startles and it's loud. And I hadn't really realized that I had stopped doing it until I started doing it a couple of weeks ago. And I am getting louder. It startled me really good yesterday. And think, I think it's because, well, it feels like more me, because that's
Mm-hmm.
how I always used to be. That was his
Mm-hmm.
favorite thing when we were dating. And I think it's also a sign that I'm more in the moment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm less like, you know, on alert for any potential dangerous thing everywhere all the
Yeah.
time. And I'm more focused on the thing that I've chosen to give my attention to. And I thought about how my my best friend that I've known since I was 5, she used to get so irritated in a playful way, but she was like, "You're so weird and like wacky and silly and funny and fun. And nobody at school knows that because you're only like that at home with me and your mom." And just thinking about like what is that? Just insecure, self-conscious thing. I I can be very fun. And I generally, outside of my space, outside of my safe space, that's not what I tend to do. So yeah, all the themes, all the like childhood themes, and like my essential self, and the word neutral was really helpful. I just read a book this week, and she talked a lot about all these different tasks and thoughts that we use to define our worth and our value, and they're morally neutral. Like my weight is morally neutral. I'm healthy. There's nothing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not having like any weird body stuff because I've gained, 50 pounds in the last 6 years. I'm fine. And even like dishes and stuff like that, she talks about just keeping it functional. Like, what do you need to be able to cook in your kitchen tomorrow? Cool, that's it. Like, don't have the energy to fold your clothes. Most of our clothes don't get wrinkled anymore. Just shove them in the drawer or leave them in the basket. Like,
Yeah.
it's morally neutral. Like, you're not there. That doesn't say anything about you being a bad person. So anyhow, I was thinking a lot about what I had read and about kind of some of the thoughts I've been having about, coming back to my true self. And I really did like the seasons because I get so frustrated that there isn't room for everything. But I don't want that to mean that I ignore that thing and it gets forgotten, you know? And so I think that it's like quarterly planning. Like, I
Yeah.
want this project to get done this year, but it's not going to happen until Q3. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to touch, I can't focus on it. I'm not going to touch it until then. And so just thinking about, what that could look like, and when could I devote time to recording some self tapes and revamping my resume and getting an actors access account set up so that I can submit for auditions without even, like, I just submit my videos and I don't have to actually do anything. instead of just worrying all the time that all the things that I want to get done aren't getting done, choosing like this time is play and family and community. Oh, the last thing that was coming up earlier, this book that I just read, she was talking about how sometimes it's hard just to brush your teeth. And I was like, yeah, no one ever talks about that. And I feel so gross for being the only person who has a hard time brushing their teeth. And how she bought herself a stash of like pre-pasted disposable toothbrushes.
Oh, wow.
So that she could just grab them on her way out the door. And she is an environmentally conscious human, and that was hard for her. But the way that she talks about, compassion is always the ethical choice, including compassion for yourself. And it's really like my waste as one person is such a small thing. And the more I can get myself to a higher level of functioning, then the more good I can do later on. Right.
Yes.
And
exactly.
The way that I was envisioning it when you were talking about it, that connected it back to what I had been reading, is like flipping this pyramid on its head. I've given so much weight to the planet and the environment and helping the community at large make better choices. And even my new business is still focused on that. When really, because you said it, growing out the other way, like it starts with the home, like my home and my body and my home with my little family, and then these new friends that we're bringing into our home, and then the community that I live in, and then the planet, when the home is healthy enough to support this. And that was really the visual that I had when you were talking.
I love that visual. Yeah, that feels really good. I'm glad you could go there, because I know some people might be like, how's that even going to work? It's going to work. It's just a different way of looking at it. And yeah, starting with you and starting at the home. I wrote down, how do you control exuberance? Because play and exuberance, I love that this wild, silly, fun part of you is naturally you, your essential you. And I like to control things as well. I understand that. And I also think you may not be able to control exuberance. I don't know. And that might be, I don't know if your need for control is something that you might find other areas of life where that works, or
I think I need to let it go.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
I do, because I think that now I'm starting to connect control and restriction, which is what has really created the divide between myself and my body. Because yeah, I think I need to figure out how to let it go. I don't know. But I hadn't really put those words next to each other before. And restriction has become such a dirty word for me. It really makes my whole body just like tense up.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it is really at the root of so many of my problems, like restriction, limitation. Yeah.
Yeah. And back to the environmental stuff too. It's like that's the other thing. I feel like if you really care about the environment, you've been taught, okay, make sure you don't use too much, which in a way, these are good values. But I like how you said it too. Compassion is the most ethical choice. This extreme restriction, we feel deprived after a while. And people who are living fully with life, like you want to do and are doing, then there's that, if you're full internally and not deprived, the overflowing can take place in all of the other areas around you. I'm thinking too about, I don't know if related to your son and being the age you were, if it's something where you can kind of be curious and open and neutral about what's happening with him and say, hey, let's figure this out together, and like reparent yourself in a way at the same time you're figuring out how to parent him. and just being open. It's so funny. A lot of times when I don't know what to do with my kid in terms of parenting choices, I'm like, this isn't like a head problem. If whatever way that you tune in, maybe it's you're singing some songs and you're going about I feel like when you're just in the zone, singing your songs, going around, not like you just walk the field singing songs, but in my mind, you
I
kind of do.
should.
Yeah. I feel like in my mind, that's like your character if you were in a book. You're always in the fields and going around town like Belle, I guess, You're singing your songs and then you're in that receptive state, and then an idea comes. For me, I go talk to the trees, or I go meditate, or I just ask my intuition or the universe, give me a clue about what to do with my kid, because I don't know what to do. Some universal intelligence knows. Mm-hmm. Our brains don't necessarily know. I think it could be cool if you learn it and explore it with him and let that be a way. You might even, as you're doing things with him, check in with your inner 9-year-old and ask, maybe not in that moment, maybe internally, quietly ask, like, what do you think about this? How does that feel for you now? I definitely feel like there's nuance, and whatever I would say, I don't know if I would say the right thing or the good thing. I know I want to eat whatever I want to eat. I want to have joyful exuberance, and I have an idea of how I want to look. And I'm in this place where I'm like, I don't want to restrict. So how do I find the good balance for me of eating whatever I want and whatever activity level that feels like I can still eat whatever I want? That's where I am with it. But it also feels like I'm not coming from a place where I have the answers about this. Mm-hmm. I'm still curiously exploring too.
I really am liking a lot of the connections that I was able to make in the last hour.
I love the connections you made too. And later I'll have you, if you can think of it, send me those books so that I can put them for if people are watching and they want to look at those books. Because I'm curious about at least one or two of them.
Yes. So the big one is How to Keep House When You're Drowning by, I think it's Casey Davis. And it is like a love letter, especially to the neurodivergent brain, or just someone who's, deep in grief or just is having trouble keeping up. She had me crying in the introduction, and I immediately got online and ordered a copy because I was listening to the library copy of it. It's very quick. I think it's about a 3-hour listen, and the chapters are super short because her intention is for it to be, immediately helpful. It's like a love letter, a permission slip, a lifeline, a life manual. It's like my new Bible. I'm in love with it.
That sounds so good. I'm going to get a copy. And I'm thinking of somebody else I know.
I bought a copy for my mom, and I immediately recommended it to a friend who's having trouble. She's trying to clear out all this stuff out of her home, and, trying to sell things is exhausting. And there's this part in the book where she addresses that specifically, the permission to just throw the things away, or the permission to use the single-use plastic items, because that is the self-care, compassionate thing that you need to do for yourself. And it was just what I had been needing for probably the last 5 years since my second child was born. 6 years.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that one. The tree's here to be an ally to you, a friend, an advisor, a life coach, and that being who inspires you and makes you feel better on a day when maybe things really aren't going for you. If you are feeling the stresses of the world and they're weighing you down, this book, Talk to the Trees, will help you to have some of that calm creep back into your life. Talk to the Trees will allow you to have the calm seep into your life and infuse your day so that you feel that grounded sense that you feel when you're out in the forest or looking at the trees, or on a long vacation when you feel so restored. They can lend their wisdom to you so that you feel more able to make better decisions. Give yourself the time today to talk to the trees in whatever way that you do it. Pick up a copy of the book if you haven't already. It's a great gift for a nature lover in your life, or someone who is going through a time in which they could use that love, that care package to make their days a little bit brighter. This is the perfect gift to give them to brighten every day.